Kakalosh Boker Tov. We're continuing now with Siman Reshaim Vav Sif He. Shulhan Aruch is talking about, again, we're talking about Amira LeGoy, or benefiting from a goy. Until now we were talking about whether it's the candles and other things. Now we're going to talk about the concept of a bonfire or a heating device, a heater. So Shulhan Aruch says, Be'artzot HaKarot, in very cold countries, you're allowed to tell the goy to make a medura, bishvil ketanim, right? Umutarin agdolin litchamem bo. So he says, right now you could tell even a goy to make a bonfire, to make a heating element in order for children. And he says that even once it was done for the children, it's considered it was done beheter, it was done for permissible use, and therefore even the elders, anybody else could also benefit from it. Now, if it's going to be that it's very, very cold, so then they're allowed to do it even if there's no children. And even if it's going to be that there's going to be adults only, still it's permitted to do it. Why? Because everybody is sick to do with the cold. Now he says, however, that you cannot be lenient if it's not that cold. So now let's try to explain. We know that in order to do a melacha, you cannot ask a goy to do a melacha for us. However, though, for a chole she'en bo sakana, we are allowed to ask a goy to do even a melacha deoraita. So here what happens is, since everybody is considered sick when it's so cold, because people obviously can get a cold, that's the concept. So therefore we're allowed to tell the goy to heat up, to make a bonfire, to put the wood, to make a bonfire in order that a person doesn't get sick. To do with children are more vulnerable to getting sick. And also, it's not only actually children. Shulchan Aruch just brings down kitanim. The same halacha would apply to the very elderly. We're talking about the very elderly people. So also, they're very vulnerable to getting sick. So for them, automatically, they're considered chole she'en bo sakana. Automatically, they're considered a sick person that does not have a sakana, obviously. Because if it was a sakana, then there's no doubt whatsoever that if there's a danger, you're allowed to turn on the fire for them. But we're talking about that it does not have a danger. So therefore, what says the Shulchan Aruch is, for a child that's suffering, or again, huadin, the same halacha would apply to very elderly, that they're suffering, you're allowed to come and tell them, even if it's a kor is not that gadol, it's not that cold, but it is still cold and they could get sick. Now, all these halachot though, right, obviously, again, we just said is only if it's going to be very, very cold. If it's not that cold, so therefore, you cannot do it for adults, which means that a regular adult, he's not going to get sick out of it, right? So therefore, you cannot come and you cannot have the goy come and turn on the fire for them. Now, even in all these cases, says Rav David Yosef, this is all before the invention of electricity. Why? Because it was very difficult that they had to come, they had to gather the wood, they had to turn it on, they can't leave a bonfire from the night before. It was very, very difficult. Nowadays that we have heaters and we have electricity, obviously it's incumbent upon us to what? To turn it on before Shabbat, and you leave it on before Shabbat, or you turn it on a timer, or and so on and so forth. However, though, we do learn from this halacha that if it does happen that there's a fasha, there's something that happens, there's a ketzer, all of a sudden the lights, the electricity turns off, the heater turns off, or all these other cases where there's going to be a takala, there's going to be something that happened. So now we know that according to the halacha, whenever we're talking about that it's going to be very, very freezing cold, right? It's going to be a problem. Here in Miami, we don't have usually this problem, but if you're from Montreal or Canada, you have this problem. You have, but I don't know if a person would really get sick of it if they don't put on the heater. I don't know. People actually put on the heater. It all depends, I think. The concept is that it's going to become hot, right? That a person will become sick from not putting on the heater. So in such a case, what happens is you do have the heter of coming and actually getting the goy to do it. Now, another important halacha is, what about the other way around? What does it mean the other way around? Here in Miami, it's very, very hot. So can we get the goy to come and turn on the AC for us? So now here, Rav Ovadia Yosef brings down a kula that is agreed upon by many, but also argued upon by many, which is basically that a person would get more sick from the heat than even the cold. So because of that, it's based upon Yerushalmi. So based upon that, he says that if it's mamash very hot outside and people are, they're sweating away and they could become sick because it's so hot, so then the exact same heter would apply, that you're allowed to get a goy to come and to turn on the AC for them. So that's very, very important just to remember. Even in all these cases, it is still always better also to hint it to the goy, or to tell him to do it before Shabbat, or like to hint to him that he would do it before Shabbat, or even to pay him bekablanut, which means that every single time that he would turn on, whether it's going to be the heater or the AC, he would get paid for it. So by doing all these things, it makes it a little bit lighter, right, than if you're doing it on Shabbat. But again, this is the general rules that if a person, let's say for example, the AC broke or something happened, or the AC just turned off, and now that they need the AC on, or they thought that it wasn't going to be cold, all of a sudden everything changed, or the other way around. Obviously, again, for children, it's much more lighter that you're able to together go to turn it on. But even for adults, if it's going to be mamasha very heavy, whether it's going to be very cold or very, very hot, so then we do have the heter of telling a goy mefurash to come and turn it on. We would usually do it through a remez, and that's the best, so that way we get out of any problems.